The Yellowstone universe is about to take us somewhere we've never been before. And if this trailer is telling us anything, it's that 1969 might be the most intense chapter yet. What we just saw isn't just a glimpse into the past, it's a warning. A warning that the Dutton legacy we thought we understood is about to be tested in ways we never imagined. And trust me, after breaking down every single moment of this trailer, I can confidently say, Episode 1 is going to hit hard. The very first thing that stands out in this trailer is the tone, and it feels different, heavier, slower, but at the same time, far more emotional. We are not stepping into a story about power rising. We are stepping into a story about power fading. Right from the opening moments, there's this quiet tension surrounding Spencer Dutton. You can almost feel the weight of time on his shoulders. This is no longer the fearless man we saw fighting through chaos in the past. This is a man who has lived through everything, and is now facing the end of it. And I truly believe Episode 1 will begin by showing us exactly that. Spencer in his final days, not as a warrior, but as a witness, watching everything he built slowly move beyond him. At the same time, the trailer makes it very clear that the center of the story is shifting. John Dutton II is no longer just part of the family. He is now the one carrying the entire legacy. And what makes this so exciting is that we are not going to see a perfect leader. We are going to see a man under pressure, a man trying to protect something that is constantly under threat. From the way the trailer builds his presence, I think Episode 1 will focus heavily on showing how John handles responsibility, how he makes decisions, and most importantly, how those decisions begin to create cracks within the family itself. And that's where things start to get really interesting. Because this doesn't feel like a simple story about the ranch anymore. It feels like a story about conflict from within. The trailer hints at multiple claims, multiple voices, and multiple tensions building at the same time. You can sense that the Dutton Ranch is no longer just land. It's something everyone wants a piece of. And in Episode 1, I think we will begin to see the early signs of that struggle. Not through big action scenes, but through quiet conversations, tense moments, and decisions that don't sit right with everyone. Another detail that really stood out is how the trailer subtly introduces the next generation. Young John Dutton III is not just there in the background. He feels important. There's a sense that we are watching the early shaping of someone who will one day become the man we already know. And I think Episode 1 will take its time to show us that transformation beginning. Not in a dramatic way, but in small moments. Learning, observing, and slowly understanding what it means to be a Dutton. And if done right, this could easily become one of the most powerful parts of the entire series. But what truly makes this trailer perfect is how it balances everything without revealing too much. It gives us just enough to feel the tension, just enough to understand the stakes, but still keeps the biggest moments hidden. And that's exactly why Episode 1 feels so exciting right now. Because we are not just waiting for a story to begin, we are waiting to see how all these pieces come together. The fading of Spencer, the rise of John, the tension within the family, and the beginning of a new legacy. And if this first trailer is any indication, Yellowstone 1969 is not just going to continue the story, it's going to redefine it. As the trailer continues, one thing becomes very clear. Episode 1 is not just about introducing characters, it's about setting up a storm that is already on its way. And at the center of that storm, there is one major question. Who truly owns the future of the Dutton Ranch? Because from what we can understand, this is where the real tension of the episode will begin. It won't start with violence or chaos, but with uncertainty. A quiet but dangerous uncertainty that slowly builds with every passing moment. I strongly believe that Episode 1 will begin expanding on the idea that the ranch is no longer as secure as it once was. Over the years, too many things have changed. Too many people now have reasons to come back, to claim, or to challenge what the Dutton family has held on to for generations. And the trailer hints at this in a very subtle but powerful way. It gives us the feeling that the past is not done with the Duttons. In fact, the past might be coming back to confront them. One of the most interesting possibilities here is the return of long-forgotten connections. People who were once part of the family story, or tied to it in some way, could now reappear with their own claims and motivations. And if that happens, Episode 1 will likely introduce these tensions very carefully, not by revealing everything at once, but by planting small seeds of doubt. Conversations that feel slightly off, reactions that seem too strong, moments where you can tell something deeper is going on beneath the surface. At the same time, the relationship between John Dutton II and the rest of the family could become one of the most important parts of the episode, because leadership is never simple in the Yellowstone world. Every decision has consequences, and not everyone will agree with the path John chooses. The trailer gives off this strong feeling that John will be forced to make choices very early on, choices that might protect the ranch in the short term, but create serious tension within the family itself. And this is exactly the kind of slow-burning conflict that Yellowstone does best. What makes this even more intense is the possibility that these conflicts are not just emotional, but also strategic, because owning a ranch like this is not just about family bonds. It's about control, influence, and power. And Episode 1 might begin to show us how these elements are shifting, how alliances are forming, how trust is being tested, and how even the smallest decisions could have long-term consequences. Another layer that cannot be ignored is the outside world. 1969 was a time of major change, and the trailer seems to quietly reflect that. There's a sense that the world beyond the ranch is starting to push in, whether it's through economic pressure, social changes, or even political influences. It feels like the Duttons are no longer isolated from everything around them. And this could play a huge role in Episode 1, showing us that the challenges they face are not just coming from within the family, but also from forces they cannot fully control. And then there's the emotional weight of it all. Because while the story is building towards conflict, there is also a deep sense of loss present throughout the trailer, a feeling that something important is slowly slipping away. Whether it's the old way of life, the unity of the family, or the strength of the legacy itself, Episode 1 might carry this quiet sadness beneath everything else. And that's what makes it so powerful. It's not just about what is coming, it's about what is already being lost. By the time Episode 1 reaches its final moments, I believe we won't just be watching a story unfold. We will be fully pulled into a world where every character is standing at a crossroads. A world where the past, present, and future are all colliding at the same time. And if the trailer is anything to go by, this collision is only just beginning. As we move deeper into what Episode 1 might reveal, the trailer begins to hint at something even more powerful: the shaping of the next generation. Because while the story of Spencer and John Dutton II carries the weight of the past and present, there is another layer quietly building in the background, and that is the early transformation of John Dutton III. And if you pay close attention, you can feel that his journey might become one of the most important aspects of the entire series. At just 13 years old, John Dutton III is at a stage where everything he sees, everything he experiences, will define the man he eventually becomes. And I think Episode 1 will carefully begin that process. Not in an obvious or dramatic way, but through subtle, meaningful moments. Moments where he observes how his father handles pressure, how his grandfather carries the burden of his past, and how the ranch itself demands strength from anyone who wants to protect it. These small details could slowly start shaping his mindset, teaching him lessons that will stay with him for life. What makes this even more interesting is the possibility that John won't fully agree with everything he sees. The trailer gives off a slight sense of rebellion, a feeling that he might not always follow the path laid out for him. And this is where things could become truly compelling. Because instead of simply becoming the next leader, Episode 1 might show us the beginning of his internal conflict. A struggle between doing what is expected of him and discovering who he really wants to be. At the same time, I think we might also see John starting to take risks, small at first, but meaningful. Whether it's stepping outside the boundaries set by his father, or trying to prove himself in ways that could backfire, these early decisions could create tension not just for him, but for the entire family. And this kind of tension is exactly what makes a story feel real, because it shows that the future of the ranch is not guaranteed. It depends on choices, mistakes, and growth. Another important aspect that Episode 1 could explore is the emotional connection between the generations. The relationship between Spencer, John Dutton II, and young John could be one of the most powerful dynamics in the series. You have 3 different stages of life, 3 different perspectives, all connected by the same legacy. And through their interactions, we might begin to understand how the Dutton values are passed down, and how they sometimes change along the way. Spencer, in particular, could play a crucial role here. Even in his final days, his presence alone carries meaning. The things he says, the advice he gives, even the way he looks at the ranch, these could all leave a lasting impact on young John. And I think Episode 1 might include a few quiet but unforgettable moments between them. Moments that don't feel dramatic on the surface, but carry deep emotional weight. Because sometimes, the most important lessons are not taught through action, but through reflection. At the same time, we cannot ignore the possibility of new relationships forming in John's life. The trailer subtly suggests that this might not just be a story about family, but also about connection, friendships, early bonds, and maybe even the first signs of something deeper. These elements could add another layer to his character, showing us that even in a world filled with responsibility and pressure, there is still room for personal growth and emotion. And this is exactly what makes this part of the story so engaging, because we are not just watching events unfold, we are watching a legacy being built from the ground up. Every lesson, every mistake, every moment of doubt, it all contributes to shaping the future. And if episode 1 handles this the way the trailer suggests, then we are about to witness the beginning of one of the most important character journeys in the entire Yellowstone universe. By the end of it, we might not see a fully formed leader yet, but we will definitely see the first signs of who John Dutton III is meant to become. And that alone makes this episode something truly special. As the trailer reaches its final moments, it begins to open the door to something even bigger, the world beyond the Dutton family. Because as much as this story is about legacy and bloodlines, Yellowstone has always been about conflict from every direction, and episode 1 feels like it's preparing us for a much wider battlefield, one where the Duttons are not the only ones with power, and definitely not the only ones with something to lose. One of the strongest possibilities here is the return of rival forces. Not just in the form of simple enemies, but as well-established families, businesses, or individuals who have been waiting for the right moment to make their move. The trailer gives off this quiet sense that the Dutton Ranch is being watched, that there are people who see the cracks forming within the family and are ready to take advantage of them. And if that's the case, episode 1 might start introducing these threats in a very subtle but effective way. Instead of immediate confrontation, we might see hints. Small interactions, distant tensions, or even conversations that suggest something bigger is coming. And this is what makes it so suspenseful, because the danger doesn't need to be loud to be real. Sometimes, the most dangerous enemies are the ones who wait, who observe, and who strike only when the moment is perfect. And from what the trailer suggests, 1969 could be filled with exactly that kind of calculated tension. At the same time, there is another layer that feels just as important. The presence of the Rainwater family. Yellowstone has always respected this part of the story, and I think episode 1 will continue that tradition. We might begin to see how their journey is evolving during this time, how their perspective on the land differs from the Duttons, and how their story might slowly start to intersect with the main narrative once again. And if handled carefully, this could add a powerful emotional and historical depth to the series. But what really stands out is how the trailer reflects the changing world of 1969 itself. This is not the same environment we saw in earlier timelines. Society is shifting, values are changing, and new challenges are beginning to rise. And I think episode 1 will subtly introduce these elements, not as the main focus, but as an underlying force that affects everything. Whether it's through economic pressure, cultural change, or even the influence of events happening far beyond the ranch, the Duttons might find themselves dealing with a world that no longer works the way it used to. This creates a very interesting situation, because now, the Duttons are not just fighting to protect their land, they are fighting to hold on to a way of life that is slowly disappearing. And that adds a whole new level of intensity to the story. It's not just about winning or losing anymore. It's about survival in a world that is constantly moving forward, whether they are ready or not. And then there's the emotional tension that comes with all of this. Because as external threats begin to rise, internal conflicts don't simply disappear. They become even more dangerous. Decisions made under pressure can break trust, create division, and push characters in directions they never expected. And episode 1 might begin to show exactly how fragile everything has become. How one wrong move could set off a chain reaction that changes everything. What makes this so compelling is that the trailer doesn't give us clear answers. It gives us questions. Who can be trusted? Who is hiding something? And most importantly, who will make the first move? These questions alone are enough to build suspense, and if episode 1 leans into this uncertainty, it could create a truly gripping start to the series. By the time this episode begins to reach its closing moments, I believe we will feel it, the sense that something big is coming. Not immediately, not all at once, but slowly and inevitably. A conflict that is building piece by piece, decision by decision, until it finally reaches a breaking point. And when that happens, everything we see in episode 1 will suddenly take on a whole new meaning. And now, as we come to the final part of what this trailer is really setting up, we need to talk about the bigger picture. Because episode 1 is not just building a story, it's laying the foundation for everything that will follow. Every detail we've talked about, every character, every tension, it all feels like the beginning of something much larger. And that's exactly why this trailer feels so powerful. One of the most important things episode 1 will likely do is establish the emotional core of the series. Not just who the characters are, but what they are fighting for. And in Yellowstone, that has always been more than just land. It's about identity. It's about legacy. It's about holding on to something that defines who you are, even when the world is trying to take it away. And from what we've seen in the trailer, 1969 is going to push these themes even further than before. I also think episode 1 will end on a very strong and memorable note, not necessarily with a huge moment of action, but with something that stays with you. A decision, a realization, or even a quiet moment that changes the direction of the story. Because the best beginnings are not the ones that give you everything. They are the ones that make you need more. And this trailer feels like it's leading us toward exactly that kind of ending. At the same time, we cannot ignore how important the performances will be in bringing this story to life. This is a series that depends heavily on emotion, on presence, and on the ability of its characters to make you feel every decision they make. And if the casting rumors turn out to be true, we could be looking at some incredibly powerful performances. Especially when it comes to characters like John Dutton II and Spencer, whose journeys carry so much weight. There's also the question of narration, something that has always added a unique touch to this universe. If the series chooses to bring back that style, it could once again create a deeper connection between the audience and the story. A voice that guides us, that reflects on what we are seeing, and that reminds us that this is not just a story happening in the moment. It's a story that is part of something much bigger. But beyond all of that, what truly makes this trailer stand out is how confident it feels. It doesn't try to overwhelm you. It doesn't try to reveal too much. Instead, it focuses on atmosphere, on emotion, and on building curiosity. And that's why I truly believe episode 1 has the potential to be something special. Something that doesn't just continue the Yellowstone story, but elevates it. Because at the end of the day, this is what we are all waiting for. Not just another chapter, but a chapter that matters. A chapter that adds depth to everything we've already seen, while also opening the door to something new. And if this first trailer is anything to go by, Yellowstone 1969 is ready to do exactly that. Now it's your turn. After watching this trailer, what stood out to you the most? What kind of story are you expecting from episode 1? And do you think this could become the best Yellowstone spin-off yet? Let me know your thoughts, because this is only the beginning.